Hello and welcome to Andre Thrive's Small Business Webinars. Today is Thursday, November 7th. You're attending one of our weekly webinars, Great to Help New Jersey Small Business Owners Start, Grow, and Thrive. My name is Uzma. I'm a consultant here at NJSBDC, and NJSBDC stands for New Jersey Small Business Development Centers. We are a network and a statewide program powered by the SBA, that stands for Small Business Administration, and partners alike to help small businesses in New Jersey with three main things. And those things are no cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, just like this one that you're attending, and exclusive small business resources. If you're ever interested in learning more about our organization, please go to njsbdc.com. And if you're curious about the map that you see on the slides, that means that we have many, many locations throughout the state of New Jersey. Wherever you see on the map on the screen where the small SBDC logos are located, that is where you'll find our about 10 regional centers and a satellite office, as well as a state office throughout the state of New Jersey. Again, go to njsbdc.com and find out where those locations are exactly. If you are new here, we appreciate your support. Thank you for attending. Thank you for taking your time and expressing your interest and being here. If you have been attending our webinars and you've been referring them to your friends, family members, we really appreciate your support and we look forward to working with all of you. Go ahead in the chat and let us know who you are, where you're from, what you're doing. If you're from the state of New Jersey, if you're from outside of New Jersey, what your company is about. Feel free to network in the chat. Make sure you're sending the messages to everyone so it is viewable by everyone, not just hosts and panelists in the chat. And yeah, as I said, make sure, feel free to use it as a networking space. Introduce yourself to others, share your LinkedIn if you like, your socials, anything about your business. That space is there for you to use. Any questions that you have, you can send it to us privately as well. All right, moving on to the agenda, we have a couple of headlines to share with you. Then we have the presentation from our speaker and the Q&A session after. These are the small business headlines of the week. These are just articles, any updates, news for our small business owners that the community could benefit from. So we like to share them, whether it's happening in future or something that has already happened. That is what we like to share. We have 4 today. I'll go through them very, very briefly. The links are being shared in the chat. Just make sure you're saving the chat if you want to visit them later, or you can open the link and have it on your browser. The first is actually a press release from us at the NJSBDC Network. Collaborative initiatives fuel small business growth across South Jersey and Union Somerset region. So this is an actually initiative and events that happened, launched on September 27, 2023. This was in collaborative efforts with the NJEDA, which is the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, other notable partners such as the New Jersey Business Action Center, NJBAC, South Jersey Chamber of Commerce, the 2nd Annual Resources for Growth. So this was a networking event. Another event that happened was October 15th. So we're just showcasing and spotlighting events that we've done that had major partners attend in partnership with them. And we have many events like this happening throughout the year. So if you're ever interested, just go to our website and check out wherever they're happening. Second is SBA. So press release from SBA Small Business Administration. SBA Surety Program notches best year in 25 years. Bonding $2.8 billion in contracts to small businesses. Agency announces top performing surety partners, bonding agencies. This was published just 2 days ago. All right, so notched its best year, 25 years. Agency also announced the year's end most active surety companies and agencies. Let's quickly see. So these are the top performing company partners. These are the names, and the bonding agencies. These are the names. If you're ever interested, go to this link, check it out. Next is SBA Administrator Guzman celebrates National Veterans Small Business Week. This is very, very important in the small business community. So from November 11th to 15th, the agency will host in-person and virtual events, recognize 5 Boots to Business Instructors of the Year. Not only the SBA, of course, the entire SBA and its network, including us, SBDC, recognize 11th to 15th of November as National Veteran Small Business Week. So keep an eye out for events happening. If you are a veteran, then this is especially for you. There is an event calendar that will list local, regional, and national events, whether they're in person or online. And there are many, many other programs that are listed, as well as webinars, of course. And these are the 5 dedicated instructors who teach Boots to Business. They're the instructors, so they're listed here. Congratulations to them. Share this with your friends and family members if this is relevant to them. All right, update from business.nj.gov. This is the official site of the state of New Jersey. Recent regulations and resources. Your construction firm may qualify for tuition-free business training. So if you're a construction firm or you know somebody who has a construction firm, this is definitely of interest to you and them. Share this. New Jersey construction companies that are 51% minority, women, or veteran-owned can now enroll in Building for Growth, which is called BFG, a tuition-free 18-week hybrid training program that teaches participants how to build business capacity, access capital, and secure larger contracts. A free information session will be held on November 19th, 2024. All right, that is it for all the highlights. Back to headlines, excuse me, and back to our presentation. Things to keep in mind: some housekeeping rules we'd like you to follow and be respectful of and adhere to. Type questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. So I've seen responses come into the chat box. Thank you so much for sharing. I see Jerry Guzman, I see Darshini, Rachel, thank you for attending. Danielle, then we have, let's see, Anurag, we have Barbara, we have, all right, Lorena. All right, thank you all so much for attending and participating. So that is where all of the introductions, comments, things like that can go. Next to it or in the Zoom bar, you'll find there is a Q&A box. Put all your questions there and we'll address them in the Q&A session with the speaker. If you'd like to receive the slides from our speaker today, please complete a brief survey. As soon as you complete the survey, you'll get a link to view the presentation. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel. The link is being shared in the chat, or you can just go to YouTube, search up NJSBDC webinars, and you'll find them. All right, that is enough from me. We have our speaker, Shannon Bass, executive consultant at co-owner at BBCetc. We've had our speakers and consultants come in for a presentation from BBCetc, who we are very fond of collaborating with, not only for events, but also for client referrals. So Shannon, welcome. Thank you for navigating NIH SBIR STTR for us. We really appreciate it. Our clients, our event attendees are very interested. I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share your screen.
Okay, thank you. Okay. See my screen okay?
Yes, I can see your full screen.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And what I'm going to cover specifically is the SBIR STTR overview and some, especially as it relates to NIH. Just a little bit about BBC. We work with technology-based entrepreneurs and companies to help them advance their R&D efforts towards commercialization. And the way we do that could be potentially helping with commercialization planning. We assist companies with their SBIR, STTR applications by providing tools and reviews and helping through that submission process. We also provide training such as today, and we also offer post-award activities and assistance as well once you get that award. So what we're going to talk about today is first start off with a general introduction to the SBIR STTR program. I'm going to talk about the differences between SBIR and STTR, how to go about finding the best agency for your project, and then round out the presentation specifically talking about NIH. So what's the SBIR STTR program? So it is a more than $4.3 billion federally funded program that money from the federal government to fund small business innovation research. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research, and the STTR mechanism stands for Small Business Technology Transfer. So it is mandated by legislation. It applies to agencies with extramural research budgets that exceed certain thresholds. So of those thresholds, that agencies that meet those thresholds, there's 11 of them that meet the threshold for SBIR. And of those 11 agencies, there's 5 of them, of those 11, that meet the threshold for STTR funding. The Small Business Administration oversees the program, implementation, and compliance. The SBA issues the policy directives for the SBIR, STTR program, and the small business size regulations. This, I said, is mandated by legislation. It is authorized through the end of September 2025, in which then it will need to be reauthorized again by Congress. With this new reauthorization, that was a little over 2 years ago, they added some additional requirements where you have to do some questionnaires and limit some foreign risks, companies that are associated with companies of foreign risk, and you have to go through a due diligence and disclosure questionnaire for that. So I mentioned that the SBIR STTR program is federally funded. There's set aside money for this program. For the Small Business Innovation Research Program, there's 3.2% of the federal budget is set aside for this program, so roughly $1.2 billion. And then for the STTR program, a little over $200 million. So of those 11 participating agencies, I have listed most of them, not all of them, listed here in the pie chart, I should say, and then the whole listing here in this table. So what you see here in these different color codings and pie chart is anything that's color coded in orange are agencies that offer this type of funding in the form of a grant. And the agencies that's highlighted in purple issue their awards in the form of a contract. And then have a split here of the amount of funding that each of these agencies have for this program. So you can see that the biggest piece of the pie is DoD, Department of Defense, and all of their awards are issued in the form of a contract. After that is Health and Human Services, which houses NIH. It houses NIH and FDA and CDC. And then you have some of the other agencies that have smaller budgets, like Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, NASA, and USDA, and so forth. So the goals of the SBIR STTR program is to stimulate technology innovation, also to meet federal research and development needs, to foster and encourage participation in innovation and entrepreneurship by women and socially economically disadvantaged persons, to increase private sector commercialization of innovation that's derived from federal funding, and to foster that technology transfer between small businesses and research institutes. And that's where the STTR program comes into play. So you may have an innovation and you want to bring that to market. Okay, you need to develop it and bring it to market. So you're going to need funding. So you have choices of incurring debt for your company. You could give up equity of your company for investor dollars, or you could seek non-dilutive funding. And the non-dilutive funding is where the SBIR STTR program comes into play. So the goal of this program is you're developing a product. You need capital for that cool idea, that the innovation that you have. Maybe some of this innovation came from some basic research at a university, potentially. And you need to get that to market. You need to fully develop it so you can get to market. And for that initial development, you have a lot of risk that's involved in that early development stages. And it's too risky for most venture capital investors to want to invest in that early stage development. This is nicknamed the Valley of Death. And so this is where the SBIR STTR program comes into play to kind of bridge that gap to fund early development, to de-risk that development, so then eventually you can leverage that to attract more investor dollars to finalize all the development you need and to get to commercialization. It is a three-phase competitive program. Phase one is about proving feasibility. Okay, so you're going to prove the technical merit of your innovation. The typical award for phase one depends on the agency. It can range from $150,000 to over $314,000. And the duration of that project varies from 6 to 12 months. And then if you're successful with your phase one studies and you've proven feasibility, then you move on to phase two, which is full research development. And that timeline is usually about 2 years and a little over $2 million. And again, that just depends on the agency. Now, phase three is not SBIR STTR funding. That is when you get into commercialization stages where you're either commercializing or you're at market, or you're using other dollars, investor funds to finalize that commercialization and get to market. Just a little bit more about these phases, phase one, phase two, and then phase three. Again, phase three is not federal dollars. And then the traditional route of phase one and phase two, there is a gap. You need to be aware of this funding gap with the traditional phase one to phase two. And the reason why there's a funding gap is you're going to be submitting your application, you get that award, you conduct your research, and then you submit another competitive application for phase two. And you prepare that submission, and then you have to wait to get that award. So there's going to be a gap in between those two phases. So for this whole runway of phase one and phase two combined, you're looking at somewhere between 2.5 to 3 years and $1 to over $2 million of potential funding. One of the first things that you need to understand is if you're eligible to submit to SBIR STTR proposal. So you must have a small for-profit business. So you must be formed as a business, a small business, and it needs to be organized for-profit. So nonprofit businesses do not qualify for SBIR STTR funding. Other than being a small business, you need to be organized for, again, for-profit in the United States. Must have 500 or fewer employees, including affiliates. That's the definition of a small business. And a greater than 50% of U.S. owned by individuals or and independently operated, located in the United States. All the R&D that you're proposing for the SBIR STTR program must be conducted in the United States. In those facilities, that needs to be company controlled by the small business. And you must have all the registrations in place in order to be able to submit. So what do you need to apply? You're going to have your small business formed. You will need to have an address that's going to be required for your registrations. And you're going to have a bank account that's going to be required for your registrations as well. And all the other registrations, once you're going to have form your small business, determine what your address is, have that commercial bank account, and then conduct all the registrations that's required. Now, in order to receive an award, you will need to have your people that you're proposing to hire in place. If you're proposing to lease facilities, you will need to have that in place at time of award. And any other resources that you are proposing as part of your application, you'll need to have that put into place. Some aspects that you need to consider as you consider submitting a phase one submission for an SBIR STTR funding. So I'm going to kind of go through some aspects that you need to think about. And the first is you need to have a project team. The heart of that project team is your principal investigator. But in addition to the principal investigator, you may have other employees that you're going to be proposing to work on this project. Maybe you're going to hire some consultants. Maybe you'll have some subcontractors or some unpaid advisors. So as you put together your project team, they all need to complement each other. So they need to fill each other's gaps. So you have a well-rounded team so you can successfully conduct all the research that you're proposing. So you pull this team together, have well-defined roles for each of those team members and what their scope of work will be. So for these people that's going to be on your project team, they may be a combination of company employees, which are a W-2 employee. You may have some independent consultants because you need some specialized expertise. You could have some subcontractors that you could have a subaward with the university, for example, so you can have access to their personnel and their facilities. And then you may have some advisors that would be uncompensated advisors and available as needed. So I have a footnote here that a just-in-time requirement. So for your proposal, you don't necessarily have to have these W-2 employees hired at the time of submission. You have them identified, especially if they're key personnel for the project. And then at time of award, you would need to have them hired. So let's discuss the importance of the principal investigator. I mentioned earlier that they're the heart of the project team. They are responsible for project planning and direction of the research project. They're going to be the technical lead. They will be the primary contact with that funding agency. They're going to be responsible for overall compliance of the research that's being conducted. For an SBIR, they must be an employee of the company, meaning that they must be at least 51% employed by the company at time of award and be able to be legally empowered to work in the United States. Other resources that you may need for your project, you may need to put together some other resources for the business. Maybe you're going to have a scientific advisory board, for example. You will need to pull together some commercialization and business resources. Your company management team. You may have company managers that's actually not working on the research project, but there's going to be other resources that the company will have that you will be discussing in your proposal. You may have strategic partners. Maybe you have some other funding. Maybe you have some investors. You'll need to understand your regulatory path if you're developing a product that is regulated by the FDA. Start understanding what your reimbursement would be for if it's a medical technology and what that reimbursement model would be. And it's also helpful to have any kind of community support, for example, the SBDC. You are going to need to have company facilities for this project. Those for the work that you're proposing by the company, it needs to be suitable for that work that you're proposing. It needs to be company controlled. You don't have to have those facilities leased if you're going to be leasing space at the time of submission. You need to have it identified. You're going to be describing it, and then have a letter of support from the entity that's going to be leasing you that space. And then at time of award is then when you would be engaging in that lease. So what does SBIR fund? They're going to fund product development. SBIR, STTR is all about product development that's based on an innovative technology and has a credible commercialization path. So the whole goal of SBIR is always to develop a product that solves a problem. So for your research proposal, there must be a product. I talked earlier about you must have a project team. You also must be developing a product or a service. So it's always about product development. Now, I'm going to use product a lot, but it also could be a service potentially. You're going to be describing its intended use, what problem it is solving, who the customer is, who the end user is. These may be two different people. You will be describing your preliminary work that you have done so far in this product, and then what remaining development is needed before you get to commercialization. So keep in mind the product needs to have technological innovation. The reviewers are going to be asking themselves when they're looking for answers to these questions, I should say, when they were reviewing your proposal. What is the technological innovation that will enable the product to achieve the desired performance that you're claiming? Is there a risk of failure? Would the product be revolutionary or evolutionary? Now, you might say, okay, I want to present my technology that there's low risk of failure. That's not necessarily the best approach, especially if you have something that's highly innovative and hasn't been done before, then there is risk of failure, right? And that revolutionary idea is for agencies like NSF, National Science Foundation, that's what they're looking for. NIH is looking for innovative ideas as well that's going to have a health improvement in health outcomes. So that's what they're going to be looking for. And the product must have commercial potential because SBIR, STTR is all about commercialization of a product that's going to help our society. So it needs to, the product needs to have the ability to provide a solution to a problem in exchange for money. That's what commercialization is all about. And you're going to be communicating how important this problem is and communicating what your viable business model is. So further information that you need to provide in your proposal about commercialization is, do you understand your market? What is your market size? What is your first target market? Do you have a strategy? What's your path to market? Are you going to need partnerships? Have you identified those partnerships? Again, is there a regulatory path? What is that regulatory path? In a phase one, you don't have to know all these answers, but you need to have an idea of and communicate what you understand, what your development path is, what your regulatory path is, and what your commercialization strategy will be. In a phase two, you need to have more of your act together. You're going to have a whole commercialization plan that you're going to be presenting that outlines your whole market, your customer, the competition, the competitive landscape, your competitive advantage, your IP status, your whole finance plan, and your revenue stream prediction. So as you start your business and develop this product to commercialization, you're going to need a combination of technical and business expertise in order to be successful. So I think I have one question so far. Okay, so can a business owner be a private investigator as well? Yes, that is quite common that a person who starts the business owns the business because you're starting that business because you developed a technology and you are the most knowledgeable person with that technology. So it can be a natural fit for you to be the principal investigator. Okay, so another question is, can you talk to the key thresholds gates to provide feasibility for phase one? Assuming everything else is met, what is the bar on proving feasibility? If there are prior feasibility studies, but no RB was done, would they not qualify? So is there a rigor clinical needs for medical device and feasibility? Okay, so I'm not quite sure if I'm following completely your whole question, but though I think I'll be able to give you some answers here. Phase one, when I say it's about proving feasibility, and that feasibility can really differ per product that you're developing. And there's also different stages of feasibility. Maybe you've already proven some feasibility with your product that you're developing and proven some aspects will work, but then there's the next stage of something that you need to prove, which could still be about proving feasibility for your product. When you're putting together your proposal, you will be talking about the background of the state of the art and technology that's in this particular field for your product. What has been done so far? What's the clinical practice? What's the standard of care? and what's that gap in that technology. And you're going to be communicating that. And then you also will be communicating what you've done so far, what of the studies that's been done, not only your studies, but other people's studies, what was the rigor of their study, and if there's still some lacking data that needs to be developed. If I didn't quite answer your question, feel free to go ahead and rephrase that question again. Another question is, can an existing business that has struggled, can be an existing business that has struggled for a long time? I'm not quite understanding that question either. Can you provide additional details regarding service innovations versus product? Is the activities that would be deemed innovative, or is it NACE dependent for either the PI or organization? So I wouldn't say that it's NACE dependent. What I would say is that for a service innovation, there's a service that's innovative, maybe the approach is innovative, maybe how people are going to be able to access that service and benefit from that service could be innovative. And then in terms of NIH, is that service going to meet an existing unmet need and improve health outcomes? So that is one way you should be looking at, innovation for a service. And so elaboration on that question, I just lost the question. There it is. Social science researchers on, yeah, I'm not following. I'm sorry, Quincy, I'm not following exactly your question on what specifically you're asking there. So as far as like chances of funding, I'm going to be answering that question later.
Shannon, we can save some of the questions for later on.
Okay. Can't get this to advance right now. Here we go. So let's talk about the difference between SBIR and STTR. So, some of the difference between SBIR and STTR is the relationship that's for the Nonprofit Research Institute. For an SBIR, you're allowed to include in your research project involvement of a nonprofit research institute. For an STTR, you're required to have involvement of a nonprofit research institute. Both SBIR and STTR is still submitted by the small business, and the small business is still the awardee. So really, when you think about the main differences between an SBIR versus an STTR, the same rules of that application and that work apply, except where the principal investigator can be and how much can be outsourced. So how much can be outsourced? For an SBIR, you cannot outsource more than 33% of the scope of work and budget in a phase 1. In a phase 2, you can outsource up to 50%. For an STTR, you have to have a minimum of 40% of budget and scope of work at the small business and a minimum of 30% at that partner nonprofit research institute, 30% of the scope of work and budget. Again, the applicant is always the small business. Now, where can the PI be? For an SBIR, the PI must be at least 51% employed at the small business at time of award. For an STTR, the majority employed at small business or nonprofit research partner. So the PI could either be at the small business or can be at that nonprofit research institute, and they require to have at least 10% effort on the project. Now, I have a footnote here that for NSF, even for an STTR, the PI must be at the small business. For NIH, the PI can be either at that, for an STTR, either at the small business or at the nonprofit research institute. Keep in mind that if you're at a faculty at a university, don't forget about what your university's intellectual property policy is and required invention disclosure. Also consider potential consulting opportunities, understand what your conflict of interest policy is at the university, and be sure to communicate early and often with Tech Transfer Office about your invention. And just, every institution, every university has slightly different rules. So understand what the rules are at the university in which you're employed. So a good table here for you that summarizes the differences between SBIR and STTR that could be good for you to reference later on. Again, it comes down to where the PI can be and then how much you can outsource. Now, I mentioned that for an STTR, 40% of the budget scope of work has to be at small business, and 30% of the scope of work and budget has to be at that primary research institute. That 40-30 split has to be maintained for every project budget period. So if you're submitting a phase 2, you have to maintain that 40-30 split in each year. That additional 30% of the budget and scope of work can be done by the small business, or it can be done by that primary research institute, meaning they could get up to 60% of the scope of work and budget if needed, or you could have that 30% go towards a second subaward. So let's cover registrations that you have to have in place in order to submit an SBIR STTR application. So a good table here for you that lists all the registrations required by agency. What you're going to see in this table, regardless of the agency that you're targeting, you're going to have these first 3 registrations. You're going to have an EIN number from the IRS. You're going to have to be registered in SBIR.gov, and you'll have to have a registration in SAM.gov. Now, I do have an asterisk here regarding SAM in respect to DOD. You are not required to have a SAM.gov registration at time of submission to DOD, but you will have to have that in place at time of award, and DOD does move rather quickly, so I highly recommend that you do that registration before the submission. Now, after those first 3 registrations, then it changes per agency on the other registrations that you need. Today's focus is on NIH, and so what I have highlighted here, in addition to those first 3, is you have to also be registered in grants.gov and the ERA Commons. So a good listing here for your registrations for NIH. Again, you have to have the employee identification number, registration in SAM.gov, registration in SBIR.gov, grants.gov, and the ERA Commons. And you have here on this list, it says Assist. Assist is the web platform that NIH uses for submitting applications. That registration in Assist is the same registration that you would use, same username and login that you use for your ERA Commons registration. Okay, so the first thing that you'll have to do once you form your business is that you need to get an EIN number, federal tax identification number from the IRS. I have listed here on this slide the URL address that you can use to do that online submission. This is, again, it's a free service by the IRS. Once you have that EIN, then you can proceed to registering in SAM.gov. If you're going to do business with the government, you have to have registration in SAM.gov. Getting a grant is included in that. So you must have, for NIH, you must have SAM.gov registration. Once you complete that registration and you have active registration, you have to update that registration annually, so every 12 months. And keep in mind that there is no fee to register or renew at SAM.gov. So this is a screenshot of what SAM.gov is going to look like. you would first select Get Started if your company is not registered, or if you are registered and you're going to be renewing your registration, you would select Renew Entity. So what are you going to need in order to do the SAM registration? Again, you're going to need that EIN that was given to you by the IRS. You will have to be providing your company name, address, and your entity. Is it a corporation? Is it LLC? And it's very important that the company name is spelled exactly the same way as you did for your EIN registration, and same with your address, that they match perfectly. You will have to supply the NACE code for the product that you're developing. There is a quick lookup link that's part of the SAM registration to easily look up that code. You're going to be writing the name, address, phone, and email of your points of contact for your company. You will be providing a checking account information, bank information. It needs to be a commercial account for the company. The routing number, account number, the bank name, contact person, and email. And you will be providing company annual revenue. Now, this is just an estimate. If you're pre-revenue and you don't have any, it's fine to put $0. It's not going to be a detrimental impact if that's the case. For new registrants, you're also going to have to supply some documents to validate your legal business name, the physical address of your business, the year that your business was started, and the state of formation. Some other things that you need to keep in mind for SAM.gov registration. When you first do that registration at the beginning, you're going to be required to create a new user account in login.gov. Login.gov is what you will be using to log into SAM. You'll be going through a verification process for the email that you're providing for that login.gov. Then you're just going to go through the process of registering your new entity and providing all that core data. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing this registration, it's going to ask you the reason for your registration. And so what I have choices here that's going to ask you is, I only want to apply for federal assistance opportunities like grants, loans, and other financial programs, or you can select all awards. If you're applying to a contract like DoD, you'll want to select all awards. If you're pursuing grants like from NIH, then I highly recommend you do the first selection of only want to apply for federal assistance like grants. And the reason being is because your registration process will go quicker and it'll be a little bit easier. You're going to complete all the core data. You will be getting a cage code assignment if you selected all awards. You'll be able to skip that process and if you just select grants. And then you will have to complete assertions that's required to bid on federal contracts. Again, I mentioned that you'll need to complete the points of contact. You'll be designating who the e-business point of contact is. This is an important designation that's going to also be used for your grants.gov registration. And then after you hit submit, then you're going to wait. And it can take anywhere from 2 to more than 8 weeks until your registration is active. So I highly encourage you to start this registration as soon as possible. You will have to do registration at sbir.gov. This is a relatively easy registration to do, same day, will become active same day. And then it'll just take you through some prompts to answer about your company ownership, and a number of employees and so forth. You will have to, for NIH, register in grants.gov. This is a same-day registration. They'll become active the same day. It's important to know your role at grants.gov, whose e-business point of contact is. That's going to be the same person that you listed on sam.gov, and they're going to be responsible for administration and management of grant activities in the organization. The Authorized Organization Representative, or AOR, has authorization to submit a grant on the company's behalf. These two roles can be the same person. And if they are the same person, and if when you do the grants.gov registration, if you're using the same email that you used in sam.gov, then that e-business point of contact will automatically be given the role of AOR. And the last registration you'll have to do is with the NIH ERA Commons. You will just go into Commons login. And I don't have a screenshot, but it's pretty easy registration to register your organization. It won't take very long at all to do that registration, though it can take anywhere from 2 to 5 days for that registration to become active. Understanding some roles in ERA Commons is important. The signing official, or SO, has the authority to submit grants on the company's behalf within the assist. And they have the authority to create ERA Commons accounts, like, for example, for new PIs. If you already have a PI account in the ERA Commons, you do not create a new PI account for your company. What you would be doing is affiliating your PI account with the company. You always want to keep the SO role and the PI role and the ERA Commons separate, even if you're the same person. And then keep in mind that all senior key personnel that's proposed in an NIH grant submission must have an ERA Commons account. This has been in effect since January of this year. And so you will get an error if you do not have ERA Commons accounts with all senior key personnel that you're proposing. And this includes consultants. So some tips for registration. So begin at least 6 to 8 weeks before the deadline. Begin as soon as possible. Give yourself plenty of time for that SAM.gov registration to become active. It can take a while sometimes. Make sure that you keep a centralized record of all your logins, the email that's associated with, the username, and the password. Don't forget you have to update your SAM annually. Log into your accounts prior to the deadline to check your access, specifically for ERA Commons and the grants.gov. And keep in mind, don't pay anybody for registering your company. All these registrations are free. All right, so let's talk about finding a home for your project. So there are, again, like I said earlier, 11 federal agencies that participate in the SBIR STTR program. And each awarding agency has a slightly different rule and proposal requirements. And just to kind of a list here of what could be different about those different proposal requirements and rules, and can differ per agency. The deadlines could be different. The timing of solicitations and how many solicitations they put out are different, whether it's a grant or contract. The review process can be significantly different between granting agencies and contract agencies. The R&D topic areas will vary. The amount of the award could vary. The gap in funding for continuation grants could be slightly different, and the payment types and schedules can be different. So again, just a reminder of the different agencies, whether they're grants or contracts. So let's focus a little bit on the differences, some of the differences between contracting agencies and granting agencies. For contracting agencies, the agency establishes the requirements and the topics. They're highly focused topics. As opposed to granting agencies, they're investigator initiated approaches, broad topics. The award mechanism can be different. For granting agencies, it's more of an assistance mechanism. They're not going to buy your product in the end. For contracting agencies like DoD, it's more of a procurement mechanism where then eventually DoD may be your customer. For contracting agencies, there can be more fiscal requirements. There's going to be invoices that you have to submit that's tied to progress reports or agreed upon deliverables. The granting agencies have a little bit more flexibility in their budgets, and you will be submitting progress reports and final reports at the end of your research project. And then again, like I said, procurement mechanisms for contracting agencies, there can be some phase 3 opportunities, meaning they become your customer. So one way to go about determining which agency might be a good fit for your technology is to do a little bit of research on what these agencies have funded in the past. A good way to start is to get on SBIR.gov. SBIR.gov has links to all 11 agencies. They list current and past solicitations, and you can search past awards by agency. You can browse by topics, or you can browse by agency. This example here, you could put in a search topic like Ebola, and then you would come up with some opportunities that were open that's directly related to that subject. You can see stuff that's just open, or you can see past solicitations that have been closed. And you also can look up past awards where you just select portfolio and put in some keywords, or if you know the topic code, or if you want to, search by Research Institute, you have different ways that you can search these awards. And so for this example, using the Ebola example again, where you can get some different hits of awards that have been awarded with this keyword. And you can see what the project was, the agency that awarded that particular project, what the award was, the amount, the company, who the PI was. So in this example right here, you have like a hit that was awarded by USDA and another project that was awarded by DOE. You can further look up more information about that project, where you can read the abstract, where you can understand what this project was about. So you could also just look up, another example here using the term biofuel, where you can then look up further funding. Here, using the term biofuel, you have Department of Agriculture, as well as Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation that awarded projects that's related to that keyword. And then you can further drill down. You can select one of those funding projects that were funded. You can see who the agency was and the amount that it was awarded, the year that it was awarded, the company, and the principal investigator, and then again, the abstract. So that's a good way to start trying to nail down what agency might be a good fit for your project. And then you can proceed on to looking at agency-specific databases. The databases that's specific to agencies, their database is a little bit more current than SBIR.gov. So for example, for NIH, you would go to NIH Reporter. For NSF, you would go into America's Seed Fund. Okay, so let's focus a little bit about just NIH, National Institutes of Health. Now, the Health and Human Services houses NIH, as well as FDA, CDC, ARPA-H, and ACL, Administration for Community Living. You've probably have heard of the omnibus that it is out. They have a deadline 3 times a year, and that the agencies within HHS that participate in the omnibus are FDA, NIH, and CDC. ARPA-H has their own solicitations, and ACL has their own solicitation. So as you put together your proposal and wondering if NIH is a good fit for your technology, it's always important to understand the mission of NIH. And the mission of NIH is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. So NIH is all about improving health outcomes within our society. There are 27 separate institutes and centers within NIH. They will have different missions and different research priorities, and their budgets for SBIR, STTR funding in the sense of how many awards they might could give out varies per institute. So just a little bit of a breakdown of what that looks like. So as you can see, NCI has the biggest piece of the pie there, NCI and National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, followed by National Institute of Aging, Heart, Lung, Blood Institute, and so forth. So just because those institutes have a much bigger budget doesn't necessarily mean that you should not target some of these other institutes. It all depends on where your technology is the best fit and which institute would be interested in the type of technology that you're developing. So I mentioned the omnibus solicitation. They have 3 deadlines per year, April 5th, September 5th, and January 5th. So the next deadline coming up is January 5th. Now, January 5th falls on a Sunday, so the actual deadline is January 6th. The current budget cap for phase 1 is a little over $314,000, and for phase 2 is not quite $2.1 million. There are also some special opportunities and requests for applications that are targeted towards particular research missions that the institutes would have to kind of help fill the gaps of some research they're wanting to see conducted. Then also, NIH does have a contract solicitation, and it only comes out once a year. It usually comes out in about July with late October, early November deadline. A good resource for you once you start considering submitting to NIH is to get on the NIH Seed website. They have a good wealth of information for you. There's that you can find the application guideline there and a lot of FAQs. It's also a good resource to find all the open funding. So as you drill in, you can look at small business program basics. You can find funding, step-by-step instructions on how to apply and how to prepare your application. So a good resource on this site is to find funding, where you can see all the SBIR, STTR notices of funding opportunities that's open specific to NIH. So you would select SBIR, STTR grants, and then you would be able to see the current omnibus solicitations, the targeted opportunities that's open, and then you would be able to also get some good documents that talk about the program descriptions per institute and what those research topics are. So for the omnibus solicitation, there are 4 omnibus solicitations. And so what are the differences between these 4? It's going to be important to know these differences before you start your application. There's going to be an STTR where there's no clinical trial allowed, and then an SBIR where a clinical trial is allowed, an SBIR where there's no clinical trial allowed, and an STTR where a clinical trial is allowed. So basically there's 2 SBIRs, one with a clinical trial, one without a clinical trial, 2 STTRs, one with a clinical trial, one without a clinical trial. And then if you scroll down further on the website, you'll see all the specific funding opportunities, the targeted solicitations that's open. So the NIH SBIR STTR program is a 3-phase program where you have your phase 1, you have your phase 2, and then commercialization is phase 3, where they do not offer funding for that commercialization aspect. So traditional route is phase 1, where you're proving feasibility of your technology, and then phase 2 is when you conduct your full R&D. Now, NIH does offer what's called a fast track, which in one submission, you'll be submitting the work that you're doing in phase 1 as well as phase 2. They also offer a mechanism that's a direct to phase 2, where you're skipping phase 1 and going directly to phase 2 because you already have feasibility data and you're ready to proceed with phase 2 work. They also have more competing renewals called a phase 2B. So it's like a second phase 2 after you completed your first phase 2. And that can be anywhere from up to $1 million per year for, a time of, anywhere from 2, 3 to 4 years. And there's also a mechanism called the Commercialization Readiness Pilot, the CRP, which is more development that you can application that you can submit for more development for products that's regulated by the FDA, whether you got to do IND enabling studies or, clinical trials. Keep in mind that there's 27 institutes and centers, and not all of them participate in the phase 2B or the CRP. So the NIH Fast Track, everybody's highly interested in the Fast Track because it's exactly what it sounds. You can proceed quickly from phase 1 to phase 2. There's not a gap in funding like what I talked about earlier. And the reason why there's not a gap in funding is because you're submitting one application that's going to go through one peer review. And so what will happen is you go through that peer review, and let's say you score well and you are considered for funding. The first thing that will happen is you'll get that phase 1 award. You conduct your work, you've met your milestones, you write a progress report, and you send that to the NIH program staff for review. And then they will review that, determine that you're ready to proceed to that phase 2 portion, and then they award you the phase 2. So there's not a second peer review. And so that's why it can proceed so quickly, where ideally you would not have a gap in funding between phase 1 and phase 2. But are you ready to submit a fast track? Fast tracks are difficult to write because you're proposing all the research that you're going to do in both phases. Some other aspects you need to consider to be competitive. You need to have some good, convincing preliminary data. You need to have some data that indicates to the reviewers that your phase 1 feasibility has a strong chance of succeeding, and then you'd be able to then later proceed to phase 2. You need to have clear, measurable, achievable milestones and a clear separation of the phase 1 work versus the phase 2 work that you're proposing. You're going to have to present a well-conceived commercialization plan. To be competitive, it's a good idea to have some letters of support from either potential customers or investors once you finish your phase 2 and proceeding to phase 3. And it's good to have members of your team to have a track record of commercialization. Now, for a direct to phase 2, you're skipping phase 1 and you're proposing full R&D. And so what that means is that you have phase 1 equivalent research that's already been conducted, that was conducted through non-SBIR, STTR funding sources. So you don't have to have a previous phase 1 award in order to submit a phase 2. What you do have to keep in mind that the directed phase 2 is only available as SBIR. You cannot submit a directed phase 2 for an STTR. Also, the directed phase 2 is only available by NIH, not CDC or FDA. And then phase 2 competing renewal. So after you have completed your phase 2, you would submit yet another application, and you'd be providing a progress report on your phase 2 work, and then propose more research and development that has to be done for your product. This is usually for products that require a lot of time and effort to develop the product, specifically if it's regulated by the FDA. And so just keep in mind that not all institutes participate in the phase 2B, and some participate using the omnibus, and some participate by releasing their own solicitation for phase 2B. A good example of that is NCI. They have their own phase 2B solicitation that they release. And the CRP, they can provide up to $3 million in additional funding. And you can submit this while your phase 2 is still ongoing. It can run concurrently. And the type of work that you'd be proposing for this is some activity that's not always funded through a traditional phase 2 or phase 2B, like preparation for an FDA submission, development of IP strategy. And then you may be proposing more work that's clinical studies or IND enabling studies. You can propose some manufacturing cost and regulatory assistance. And it's also not tied to that $50 no more than 50% can be outsourced, you can outsource more because they are anticipating that you would have to outsource a lot of work to like a contract research organization. So earlier I was asked about success rates and one of the questions. So here's an example of what success rates look like between the different phases. So you're looking at around 14 to 18%, 15 to 19%, let's put it that way, difference between SBIR and STTR for a phase 1, and that dramatically increases in a phase 2 on success rate because you have proven feasibility. So there's a higher amount of phase 2s that will get awarded. The success rate of a fast track is very similar to the success rate of a phase 1. So you're pursuing an NIH and you need to find the best fit, the best for your technology for the institute that you want to target. So the best way to go about that is to start doing some research with the different institutes and centers to see what type of technology they are funding. A good way to start is to get on the NIH website. They have links to all the different institutes. And then you can also read about, the mission statements for each institute and the type of research that they're wanting to see. The next step would be to go into NIH Reporter. This is a very good method to see which institutes would be funding the type of technology that's in your space. So go into NIH Reporter. You can do a lot of searches through different fields. They also have this function called Matchmaker, which is a very good, useful tool where you could go in, you could pop in your abstract, and they'll use a lot of keywords to match up which institute might be a good target for you based on your technology and your research project that you're wanting to propose. So some screenshots of what that looks like. You can put in, the different years you want to run a query on. You can put in some keywords. This example is that we're showing here is the keyword for wound dressing. And be sure to select just the SBIR, STTR funding mechanism. Otherwise, you're going to get, basic research grants like R01s and R21s. And then once you put in those keywords, then you'll get a list of the different types of awards that has been awarded that's in this field. And so you will see here that you have more than one institute that has funded projects that's based on wound dressing. And then you can further drill into that by picking any of these projects, reading their abstract. You'll be able to see not only the institute and the abstract, the company name, who the PI was, the amount that was funded, when it was funded. And then it also gives you the ability to see other similar projects from what you just selected. Maybe it wasn't captured in that first query, but you can see other similar projects to further research. And the other thing that's good to do is to contact NIH. And so the best approach for that is to first get familiar again with the institutes and try to start determining which institutes may be interested in your project. Use that NIH Reporter like what I just described. Also, you can pull this document that I have listed here. That is a PDF document that's on the NIH website that you can pull down and review. It lists each institute. You can select that institute and then go directly to their write-up where it's listing their mission, it's listing their budget guidance, how much, they will fund as far as if you want to exceed the budget waiver, what their research topics are. You can read those different research topics of what they're interested in. And then it will also list contact information. And so, and it'll list the contact information. If it's a large institute, then they'll have different divisions, and you can see which particular division you may need to approach depending on your technology. And so it gives those people's names and their email address. And email is how you would want to reach out to them. So when you reach out to them, you'll want to have a summary of what your project is. You will send that to them in an email and request a phone call to discuss your project and to gauge whether they are interested in your project, whether they'd be interested in funding the type of project that you're proposing. If that particular institute is not interested, then they might be able to tell you what institutes might be a better fit. Some things that to ask during that phone call is, other than engaging whether they're interested, you could talk about budget waivers. Does your research project meet a topic that qualifies for a budget waiver? You can ask them whether they feel like, based on the project you're describing, if SBIR versus STTR, which is a better fit, which would be a better fit for phases, is it a phase 1, or are you in position to submit a fast track or direct to phase 2? And they also will be knowledgeable about other special solicitations that could be out there that could be a good fit for your research project. Now, they can't give this advice to you if they don't have a good summary for you. You need to send them a very good, concise summary that describes the problem that you're addressing, a description of your product, which is going to be the solution, and the research that you're proposing. And then if you want to get an opinion from them on whether you're ready for a fast track or direct to phase 2, you need to have a nice summary of your preliminary data. All right. Now I'm ready for questions. I think there's a bunch.
There are a bunch of questions, but first, before we get into them, Shannon, thank you so much for the presentation. We really appreciate it. And when there are a lot of questions, that only means that our audience was engaged, was taking notes, hopefully, and was paying attention. So thank you for that. And one more thing before we get into them, this entire webinar is being recorded. So from the beginning to the end, including the Q&A, it is recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel in maybe 1 to 2 business days. So just keep an eye out if you just want to give it a quick rewatch. And the presentation slides that Shannon just presented on will be available once you complete the survey. Nothing will be emailed, so just keep an eye out on our YouTube channel and complete the survey for the slides. All right, now we go into the question and we'll go to them in the order that we received them. If you already addressed something, Shannon, just let me know. Okay. Quincy asks, can you provide additional details regarding service innovations versus the product? Is it the activities that would be deemed innovative, or is it the NICS code dependent for either the PI or the organization? For example, if I train social science researchers on hyperlocal engagement, am I looking at that professional service or the end product and the research outputs?
So when you are putting together a proposal and you're presenting the product or service that you're developing, what you're going to be describing is that end product that you're selling. The product that you're selling or that service that you're selling, because that's the commercialization aspect. You will be describing how what those potential research outputs would be of people using that service, okay? Because that could potentially, help describe the impact that your service would have. But keep in mind that what you need to be presenting is that you have an innovative service that is going to be providing an impact on improving health outcomes.
All right, got it. Thank you. Filmy Arts asks, what are the chances of the grant application being accepted and the funds provided?
Yeah, so I had a slide earlier about that regarding the acceptance rates. So phase 1's anywhere from 15 to 18% is the national average of acceptance rates for phase 1, and then it doubles for a phase 2.
Got it. Next question is from Pat. If we have a technology that we have offered, but not yet profitable enough to grow, is that still not available by other businesses? Pat, I think your question here is incomplete. Shannon, if you picked up anything from that, feel free to answer it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an existing technology that's already been developed, and you're wanting to submit a research proposal for funding for more development, you're going to have to describe what still has to be done. Okay, why do you need this funding? What's the research? Keep in mind that you're proposing research and development. So if it's already been developed, but you're just not profitable, then that doesn't sound like a research project. So keep in mind, you're still having to propose some further R&D.
Got it. Next question is from Sudhakar. Thank you for the answer on feasibility. Adding to that, could you call out the differences in how the feasibility in medical device may be determined for phase one in NSF versus NIH? We are considering both SBIRs.
The biggest difference that what you need to keep in mind NSF versus NIH is NSF wants to fund something that's revolutionary. Okay, so you're proposing a device that has some sort of technology that is going to be revolutionary in nature, not evolutionary, not an incremental improvement. And then as far as what that feasibility is for that medical device will just depend on where you are with that development. What do you still have to prove, for that device for phase one? What's your proof of concept that you still have to clearly show? For NIH, it's the same thing. However, they still want to see, NIH still wants to see something that's revolutionary and is highly innovative, but it doesn't have to necessarily be as high risk as NSF necessarily. And what the NIH is really going to be looking for is something that you're developing that's going to have a significant impact. And that's one of the things I'm stressing a lot is the NIH is looking for development of products that's going to have a significant impact on health.
All right, thank you. Next is from Anonymous. Is the outsourcing percentages still only within the US? Can we get out-of-country contractors?
You cannot use out-of-country contractors. All work has to be conducted within the United States using SBIR, STTR funding.
Next question is from Manish. We have an in silico design of a potential drug for treating cancer. Can it be considered as preliminary data, or do we need to have some in vitro wet lab data as well for phase one?
So the guidelines will read that you are not required to have preliminary data for a phase one submission. Now, but you need to keep in mind that this is a competitive process. So to be competitive, it is good to have some preliminary data. Now, how much data that needs to be will, again, vary by drug that you're developing, vary by therapy and medical device or the product that you're developing. So it's really going to be, what you actually have at this point that you're going to be presenting. If you don't have any data and if you have the capability and funds to get some early preliminary data, then I'd highly recommend that you do that because that's going to increase your competitiveness.
Got it. Next question is from Pat. Should we apply to both SBIR and STTR sources? Can we use the same application for either or?
No, you cannot. You have to select the mechanism that you're going to be applying to.
Yep, I think that's one of the most asked questions that we usually get. Anonymous says, can we get a PhD level writing consultant for NIH?
Okay, so I believe the question here is, should they be hiring a grant writer to write their grant? Possibly, you might have to ask that question again. There's plenty of grant writers out there. You know, you have to also determine whether how well they're going to know your technology, and are you the person that knows the technology the best to do your own writing? And so you may be spending more time educating that grant writer on what you want them to write about versus just writing it yourself. If you are the inventor of that technology, then you would be the person that would know the most about your technology. Plus, for this research project, you have to propose what's going to be your research, what's going to be your experimental design. And you're going to be, if you're the principal investigator, you're going to be in charge of that. And so you have to conduct that research. So you have to determine whether a grant writer is going to be the best fit for you. If the question is related to whether the PI has to be a PhD, I'm going to just kind of go out there and because that's a common question that I get asked.
Yeah.
For NIH, there's not a requirement that the PI has to have a PhD. It potentially would make your application more competitive if your PI has a PhD, if that's expertise that's required for the research that you're proposing. So that's what you need to think about is the research that you're proposing. What's the expertise that's needed for that principal investigator oversight? And that needs to match with their qualifications. So it's not always going to, it may not always need to be a PhD level, and maybe somebody has lots of industry experience, and they're just as qualified because of that industry experience. The PI is going to be managing that project. They need to have experience managing projects and research projects and working and collaborating in a team.
All right. And if I can just add on to that, Shannon, to the first prong of the question, just a little pitch for ourselves here at NJSBDC is that we are not grant writers. However, if you, anonymous, are from New Jersey, if you have a business here in New Jersey or you're a resident and you're interested in this, then please consider our NJSBDC Tech Team. And we can talk more about that in the conclusion, but I'll say that we have a team of consultants, experts who can assist you with that, with your application in itself. So if you have something written already, we can advise you on what to include, what not to include, how to revise it, things like that. And we also have special consultants who can help you with a complete application in reviewing that line by line as well. All right, we can go over that later on at the conclusion, but thank you for that question. Rebecca says, Shannon, if you only select grants, can you change your registration at a later date to include all?
Yes, you can. So you would just be updating your registration, and it wouldn't be difficult to do it all.
All right. Anonymous asks, what are the differences between a grant and a contract?
So I do encourage you to go back and look at some of those slides that were prepared that has the differences between a grant and a contract. Just kind of high level, when you're submitting to solicitations, that's a contract. They're very topic specific, highly focused on topics. So you just need to make sure that your research that you're proposing is going to meet that topic. And then once you get the award, then the management of that award will be slightly different as far as how you're reimbursed when you get that money. The deliverables that you would have to have for a contract and the tranches of money you will get and the timing will be different for a contract versus a grant.
Understood. Next question is the funding from SBIR, STTR taxable?
It is considered revenue, so that is taxable income. Yep.
Yep. Next question is from Lee. I already have a user account with login.gov for Form M40 payroll. Is this login.gov account the same one to register on sam.gov?
Good question. It should be able to, because For example, I only have one login.gov, and I use that to log into SBA or to log into SAM and to some other accounts. So I would recommend that get on the SAM website and then choose login.gov, and then try using your current credentials to determine if that's going to work for you.
Got it. I'm looking at the chat and Rachel replied, yes, it is. So
Mhm.
Lee wouldn't hurt to try it. Thank you, Rachel, for that.
Mhm.
Next question, can your business be a home-based business with a virtual address?
Good question. I get this question a lot.
Mhm.
The way the guidelines read is they expect you to have company facilities. And, there are, some, if you're just developing software, there is a case to be made that you can potentially do that out of your home, but you need to also keep in mind, is your home company controlled? Okay. Meaning that other members of your family can't go in and get on your computer and mess with your research. Not all home offices are company controlled, from other people that's living in that house. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. NIH does give you funding for indirect costs that can cover leasing office space.
All right. Um, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we do have about 5 minutes or so till our official webinar ending time. We'll go through the questions. We'll try to go through them. Most of them, we still have 5 pending. Next question is, how do we track if our idea or our product is not already funded and so we don't waste our time applying?
Well, that's where you would go into, for example, the NIH Reporter, where you look at some other funding, that other technology that's been funded to see, um, what's currently going on within your space.
Got it. Next question. NIH Fast Track needs prior award history lineage, I thought, which means new companies can't do this.
That would be incorrect. I mean, it's good to have some a lineage is helpful. And I did mention earlier that it's good to have some good convincing preliminary data, and maybe that's going to be coming from some previous research that could have been basic research at a university, and you're spinning out that technology into a small business. But it's not an absolute requirement.
Got it. Next question is from Lee. R&D is done solely in America, but the target market is overseas. Is that eligible for SBIR?
Well, I guess that depends. NIH is interested in does have missions to develop technology for low resource countries. But to be competitive, I would highly, encourage you to determine if there's going to be any type of benefit to society within the United States.
All right. So that girl asks, is it possible to get past successful applications for NIH, NSF phase 1 to see how feasibility, et cetera, is treated?
I don't know whether NSF has on their website any examples of applications. NIH does. Specifically, the National Institutes of Aging and the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease have some sample applications that's posted on their site.
Got it. And last question from Lee is, can we submit an application to 2 agencies such as NIH and NSF more or less at the same time?
Yes, you can. You can submit the identical type of work. Keep in mind that if you were to do that, that has that type of scientific overlap, if both agencies wanted to award your project, you can only accept one. And you need to tell each agency that you submitted identical applications. Also keep in mind that the application process and the way you would put together your whole application and structure your project is different, significantly different from NSF versus NIH. So it's not as, you're just not taking one and then just immediately submitting it to the other. There's going to be significant editing involved between the two agencies.
Right. All right, and that is all with our Q&A session. Thank you so much, Shannon. We appreciate it.
Okay, great. So just real quick, if you are interested in talking with BBC about working with us, then you can go onto our homepage and click work with us, and we'll have a conversation with you. And also, please fill out the survey to let us know how I did and how I can improve.
Awesome. Shannon, thank you so much. All of this information to our audience, all of this information is available on the slides. Please make sure to complete the survey, Shannon's and ours. If you complete Shannon's, you'll be able to tell her how she did. And our survey as well, tell us how we did, how the entire webinar was. And when you complete NJSBDC's, you'll receive Shannon's slide. All right, so I am going to share my slides very quickly and go to show our website, NJSBDC. All right, here it is. NJSBDC.com is our page. This is what I was mentioning earlier in my introduction. There will be a pop-up like this. I highly recommend that you sign up for our newsletters. You just have to enter your email, first name. Usually I would go through our, just give a brief overview of our website, but I'll just say that please take maybe 5 minutes out of your day, maybe right after this webinar, to go to our website and go through the many different resources that we have to provide. Some of them being the events, the state calendar that we have on all sorts of other topics as well, besides SBIR, STTR, non-tech related, whether it's marketing, business plan, business formation. Business formation is usually a big one. If you are already doing research, but your business is not registered in the state of New Jersey, we can help you with that. But that is something different from the tech team, and then resources and data. What I do want to show is when you go to specialty programs tab, you'll be able to go to our tech team page. And this is directly related to today's webinar, as well as the topic. So if you are interested in receiving assistance from the NJSBDC Tech Team, you are a company based here in New Jersey, or you are a resident here in New Jersey, then you are eligible to receive assistance from the NJSBDC Tech Team. There is a form that you would have to fill out to let us know if you meet the SBIR, STTR requirements, not just our requirements that we have for eligibility. It's the federal requirements for this program, and you'll be able to come through. It's a Google form. You'll fill that out. I'll be in touch with you, and we'll take the process forward. As I mentioned earlier during one of the questions, we are not grant writers. None of our consultants are. We are not legally allowed to write the grants for you. However, we can review your applications. We can go through them line by line with you, and we can assist you with gathering your documents and everything together. There is the FAQ here. Please go through, understand what our team requires, how we can help you. And all you would have to do is put in your email, your county, and you'll be registered in our database system. So we look forward to having you. We look forward to assisting you. If you are interested in BBCetc services only without NJSBC's help, you can certainly do that. You are more than free to do that. That would be separate from BBCetc's assist partnership with NJSBC. So just that main difference there is that if you have an application already, if you'd like to speak with our BBCetc consultants within the NJSBDC Tech Team, then we'll go through that process with you, see if you are ready to do so. Our services are free at no cost. So keep that in mind. All right. So did I miss anything, Shannon? Anything you'd like to add?
No, do great.
All right, perfect. So that is all considering our services. If you have any questions, please let us know. This is an upcoming webinar. I'm not sure how relevant this will be for our R&D entrepreneurs joining us today, but next, this webinar is in honor of Small Business Saturday that's coming up. So Empower Your Business, Small Business Saturday Success in New Jersey. So this webinar will be held on Thursday, November 14th. We'll have our marketing consultant and a capital team consultant, but we will have special guests from NJSBA, from the SBA, a district director, as well as marketing manager from NJSBDC, and a special surprise from our state director, probably. So keep this in mind for next Thursday, and we'll see you next Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for today, Shannon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we look forward to you joining us next Thursday. Bye. Take care.